She was humiliated in front of everyone, mocked, dismissed, and told to leave the store simply because of her skin color. No ID check, no questions. Just the cold decision of a luxury store manager who believed one look was enough to judge worth. Cameras caught it. The internet exploded. But no one, not the staff, not the customers, had the faintest idea who she really was. What happened next? It didn't just expose a racist system. It shattered an empire. This isn't just another story about injustice. This is about what happens when power wears heels and walks in silence. When the person you tried to erase turns out to own the pen. Stick around, because you're not ready for the twist that's coming. What do you think happened behind those glass doors? Drop your guess in the comments, and let us know where you're watching from. And if you're into stories that start with fire and end with reckoning, hit like, subscribe, and stay locked in. This one changes everything. Fifth Avenue gleamed beneath the amber hue of the late afternoon sun, each luxury storefront a shimmering reflection of status, exclusivity, and untouchable wealth. Towering at the center of this gilded stretch was Maison Devereaux, a fortress of fashion where silence reigned louder than speech and judgment was passed not in words, but in glances. Immani Carter stepped through the front doors with the quiet confidence of someone who knew where she belonged, even if the room didn't agree. She wore a beige trench coat, cinched at the waist, pressed navy slacks, and a cream blouse with a pearl button neckline. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor, but her presence was sharp enough to cut the air. She didn't look like a TikTok heiress or a diamond-dripped diplomat's wife, but she didn't need to. Her energy commanded space. She approached the central display with ease, the opulence surrounding her absorbed rather than admired. The Cordelia, a handcrafted bag locked behind a temperature-controlled glass case, caught her eye. Labeled limited edition. Price, $28,000. Her eyes didn't widen. Her mouth didn't twitch. She simply examined it like one would a classic painting. Cool, calm, calculating. Across the boutique, behind a podium carved from walnut and draped in velvet, Victoria Mason froze mid-scroll on her tablet. She was the kind of woman whose perfume entered a room before she did, and whose smile was always a shade too polished to be sincere. Tall, blonde, and steeped in generational privilege, she was the gatekeeper of Maison Devereaux's image. And she had just spotted a threat. She didn't speak. She didn't frown. She simply flicked two fingers at Andre, her junior floor associate. "The woman in beige," she said under her breath. "Keep an eye. Subtle, please. She doesn't look familiar." Andre hesitated. "She's just looking at the Cordelia. Maybe she's subtle," Victoria repeated sharply, not breaking her frozen smile. "And stay close." Immani, unaware or unbothered, examined the curve of the bag's stitching and the grain of the Italian leather. Just then, Victoria approached, heels sharp, posture perfect. "Excuse me," she said, her voice layered in polite warning. "That bag is by request only. It's quite exclusive." Immani turned to face her. "That's fine. I'd like to request it." Victoria's smile tightened. "We usually reserve it for our most loyal VIP clients. You understand?" "Do I?" Immani replied evenly. Victoria took a half step closer. "We also have a lovely new collection in the back, more versatile in price. Might be a better fit." Behind them, a customer snickered. A white woman in a cashmere wrap murmured to her friend, "Some people really think they can just walk in and touch heritage." A couple of teenagers nearby raised their phones, already whispering about the tension. Immani looked back at Victoria, studying her with the kind of quiet precision that rattles people used to control. "You think I can't afford it?" she asked, her tone calm. "I think," Victoria said with measured disdain, "it's important we manage expectations." Immani nodded slowly. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a slim black wallet. From it, she produced a centurion card, sleek, metal, unmistakable. She held it between two fingers and extended it toward Victoria. "Then let's raise them," she said. Victoria blinked. Her smile cracked for a fraction of a second. "Still," she stammered, "we generally verify." "So verify," Immani said. "Check my profile. Call your system. Or maybe I should call corporate instead." Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. Around them, murmurs rose. One of the teenagers, filming, whispered, "This is going viral." Andre stepped forward, panic in his eyes. "Ms. Mason, maybe we should just—" "Quiet," Victoria snapped. "We have policies." "Or biases," Immani offered, slipping the card back into her wallet. "You decide which." Victoria flinched. "Ma'am, unless you're making a purchase, I'll need to ask you to leave." "I'm not the one making a scene," Immani said. "You are." She turned, not toward the exit, but toward the camera held by one of the teens. "Keep recording," she said calmly. "People deserve to see how gatekeeping really looks." Victoria's voice jumped an octave. "You can't film in here. That's against our privacy policy." Immani arched a brow. "So is racial profiling, but here we are." The boutique held its breath. A woman in the watch section quietly lowered a diamond-studded Cartier back onto its velvet cushion. Victoria Mason stood frozen for a beat, cheeks flushed beneath her contour, eyes flicking between the silent spectators and the two teenagers still recording with their phones angled discreetly toward the confrontation. She opened her mouth, then quickly snapped it shut, visibly recalibrating her response now that the stakes had changed. But beneath the mask of control, rage simmered. Rage that someone she didn't respect had dared to challenge her power, and worse, was winning. Then, with a flick of her manicured hand, Victoria stepped back and spoke in a voice that rang out across the boutique, sharp and rehearsed like a siren breaking the surface of glassy water. "Security," she called crisply, her words slicing through the ambient classical music. "Please escort this woman out of the store. She's disturbing other guests." The music was lowered by a staff member. A hush fell. Two uniformed guards emerged from a side door, not rushing, but moving with a solemn rhythm of routine enforcement. One was tall and muscular, the other smaller but wiry, both accustomed to removing people quietly and without question. Immani didn't flinch. Her voice stayed level as she asked, "Exactly what rule have I broken?" Victoria folded her arms, her tone icy. "You've created a disruption. You've made other customers uncomfortable." Immani turned slightly to glance around. "You mean I responded to being insulted? Is that what makes people uncomfortable here?" From behind the display of silk scarves, an older white gentleman in a tailored gray suit stepped forward. His voice cut through the tension like gravel against silk. "I thought this was a boutique, not a private club." He looked directly at Victoria, his tone heavy with disgust. "Are you seriously throwing her out for asking to see a bag she can clearly afford?" Victoria's smile faltered, the kind of expression that cracked only when someone outside the expected audience dared to speak. "Sir," she began, her voice regaining that customer service sharpness, "I'll have to ask you to remain uninvolved. This does not concern you." But he stepped further forward, placing himself slightly in front of Immani with the weight of someone used to boardrooms, not threats. "It concerns me when a customer is publicly humiliated over absolutely nothing." His voice grew louder, his words slower. "I've spent more than $50,000 in this store over the past 5 years. But if this is how you treat people, it'll be the last cent you get from me." Several heads turned. One woman put her phone down and crossed her arms. The teenagers recording whispered, "This just got better." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Then, sir, you are welcome to take your business elsewhere." Her words dropped like lead. The security guards hesitated, clearly unsure of how to proceed with a confrontation that was no longer neat and one-sided. The older man blinked in disbelief. "You're serious?" "Victoria Nadid. We maintain a curated environment. If you'd prefer to shop in less selective establishments, that is your choice." He stared at her for a long, stunned moment, then gave a quiet scoff and reached into his jacket. From his inside pocket, he pulled a worn leather wallet, retrieved his Maison Devereaux Black Tier membership card, and snapped it clean in half. The sound echoed. Then he turned, handed both pieces to a now pale-looking Andre, and muttered, "You'll want to send that straight to corporate. With my regards." As he strode out, several people clapped, not a roar, but a clear acknowledgement. Victoria stood in place, lips thin, hands trembling so slightly only Andre seemed to notice. Immani, still unmoved, looked at the guards and said, "Unless you plan to lay a hand on me, I suggest you step back and think carefully. There are already 3 cameras pointed your way." The guards paused, then looked at each other. One nodded almost imperceptibly, stepping back toward the wall. The moment Victoria lost their silent compliance, her posture wilted a degree. Immani turned to Andre and said, "You might want to get your manager a chair." By the time Immani turned the corner onto 58th Street, the video had already been uploaded to 3 social media platforms by the teenagers who had recorded it. Within 20 minutes, the hashtag #ShopWhileBlack was trending across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, a firestorm of outrage igniting with every retweet and every share. Commentary poured in from every direction. Civil rights activists, fashion influencers, corporate watchdogs, even anonymous retail employees who recognized Victoria's voice and shared their own stories under burner accounts. This wasn't the first time she's done this. One comment read under a reposted clip with nearly 500,000 views. She once made a black woman prove her ID matched the credit card before letting her touch a purse. Another chimed in. She told me to try Zara next time after I asked about a watch in the men's section. As the hours ticked by, media outlets picked up the story. Headlines screamed across screens. Luxury store manager humiliates black shopper, gets exposed on camera. Fashion's ugliness caught on tape. VIP discrimination in broad daylight. Major accounts with millions of followers amplified the footage, while commentary raged beneath it. Celebrities chimed in too. A-list actress Lena Vaughn tweeted, "This is why I stopped shopping there years ago. Glad it's finally on camera." #Justice for Immani. NBA All-Star DeMarcus Reed added, "Imagine spending $30K on a bag and getting treated like a thief. Couldn't be me." Each post threw gasoline on the fire. But as the storm swelled, Victoria Mason and her team moved in the only direction they knew: damage control, executed poorly. First, the store's legal department issued takedown notices to the teens who posted the original footage, citing unauthorized filming on private property. But instead of suppressing the clip, the notices only made things worse. The teenagers posted screenshots of the threats along with laughing emojis and captions like, "Guess they didn't like being exposed." Thousands of users rushed to repost the clip, flooding the internet with copies under different names and formats. The Streisand effect took hold with brutal efficiency, ensuring that anyone trying to erase the footage only multiplied its reach. Then came the store's official statement, an email blast that went out under the subject line, "Our commitment to all guests." It was tone-deaf at best and offensive at worst. The statement avoided mentioning Immani's name entirely, failed to apologize directly, and instead focused on how Maison Devereaux strives to maintain a peaceful shopping experience for all clientele. It closed with a vague promise to evaluate internal policies and retrain staff where appropriate. Twitter exploded. "This is not an apology," one comment read. "This is a press release from a company that just got caught being racist." Another wrote, "You can't retrain racism. Fire her." The fury only deepened when Victoria's personal Instagram was discovered. Though hastily switched to private, internet users screenshotted several old posts in which she bragged about turning away riffraff and joked about needing a diversity quota just to fill the cleaning staff. Those images hit the front page of Reddit in under an hour. Meanwhile, Immani remained publicly silent, her absence from social media only fueling speculation. People began to dig. Who was this woman who'd handled herself with such poise? Who had calmly outmaneuvered a system designed to humiliate her? Rumors swirled. Some said she was a lawyer, others believed she worked in tech. A few even guessed she was royalty incognito. But the truth was still locked behind her quiet resolve, and that mystery only stoked the fire further. Outside the physical store, things worsened. Protesters began gathering in front of Maison Devereaux's Fifth Avenue flagship by late afternoon. Some carried signs reading "Elegance is not equal to elitism." Others wore t-shirts with #Immani deserves better printed in bold across the chest. Passers-by stopped to record and post. Delivery drivers honked in support. The once pristine sidewalk turned into a hotbed of organized resistance. with camera crews lining up for soundbites and fashion bloggers doing live commentary from across the street. Inside the boutique, Victoria locked herself in the back office, refreshing her phone every 30 seconds, her hands trembling. She tried to call corporate. No one answered. She emailed the regional director. Inside the store, the polished glamour had withered into cold paranoia. Foot traffic had dropped to nearly zero. The air, once perfumed with sandalwood and superiority, now reeked of silence and fear. Staff members moved like ghosts, their conversations clipped and cautious, their glances always cast over their shoulders. But it was Andre, the junior sales associate who had been ordered to watch Immani that day, who finally reached his limit. At first, he tried to ignore it. He told himself the whole thing would blow over, that corporate would handle it, that Victoria would probably get a warning, and then things would go back to normal. But normal had never really existed in that store, not for him, and not for anyone who didn't fit Victoria's definition of select clientele. After 3 sleepless nights and a dozen ignored texts from his own friends asking how he could keep working there, Andre sat down in front of his cracked laptop, opened a blank Google Doc, and started typing. The words came faster than he expected. In less than an hour, he'd written a first-hand account of not just what happened with Immani, but 5 other incidents over the last 2 years where Victoria had orchestrated similar removals, each time targeting a black or brown customer, always with thinly veiled justifications. Suspected theft, inappropriate attire, creating discomfort. Andre described how each event was quietly documented, sent to HR, and then buried with vague responses like "thank you for bringing this to our attention," or worse, complete silence. He described the unwritten rules Victoria enforced about who got the best service, who was followed, and who was left to wait until they gave up and left. He described how staff were rewarded for protecting the brand, even if it meant compromising integrity. Then, with a pounding heart and shaking fingers, Andre clicked post. He uploaded the document anonymously to a whistleblower blog known for outing toxic workplaces, and within hours it was circulating like wildfire. Not just one woman, read the headline on one repost. Systemic discrimination at Maison Devereaux exposed by insider. The document hit Reddit, Instagram, and Twitter in waves. Former employees began chiming in underburner accounts and aliases, corroborating Andre's stories. One wrote, "I was told to watch the darker guests every Saturday." Another said, "Victoria once called a black father with his daughter a publicity risk and denied them entry. No one did anything." As public rage reached a new pitch, the parent company of Maison Devereaux, Bellamont Lux Group, finally broke their silence. But if they had hoped to calm the storm, their statement only worsened it. Released via a bland graphic on Instagram, the apology read, "We at Bellamont Lux deeply regret the recent events at one of our retail locations. We are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and will be conducting an internal review to ensure our standards are upheld." There was no mention of Immani Carter, no direct acknowledgement of what had actually occurred, no names, no accountability. The backlash was immediate and merciless. "No victim named equals no real apology," someone tweeted. Another user posted a screenshot of the apology overlaid with red text. "This isn't a statement. It's a shrug in Helvetica." Celebrities who had previously remained quiet now spoke with venom. Model activist Zariah Fields posted, "So you're sorry something happened, but not sorry it happened to someone? Nah, we're not doing that." Meanwhile, retail watchdogs began pressuring Bellamont Lux's other brands to respond. A growing list of celebrity clients and brand ambassadors began distancing themselves, posting black and white graphics that read, "I stand with Immani," and tagging the company in every post. As the pressure mounted, major department stores began quietly pulling Maison Devereaux products from their shelves. Email blasts from subscribers showed screenshots of canceled orders, with reasons like "no longer aligned with your values." Behind the scenes, shareholders started asking questions. Internal meetings were leaked. A Zoom call recording surfaced where a VP said, "We just need to ride this out," to which another exec responded, "Unless this woman sues, then we're screwed." But the worst blow came from within. A mid-level HR rep leaked emails between Victoria and her district manager, revealing that Victoria had used language like undesirable optics and non-luxury presence when referring to certain clients, language now being scrutinized by attorneys as coded discrimination. 5 days after the initial video went viral, she appeared on a live morning show, flanked by a lawyer and a PR specialist, who whispered in her ear during commercial breaks. Her hair was styled more conservatively, her makeup muted to match a tone of manufactured remorse. She wore navy instead of black, her posture slightly hunched to seem more human, less composed. But even through this facade of humility, the core of her arrogance bled through. "I've served this brand with integrity for over 12 years, she began, her voice trembling just enough to imply emotion. "And I have always followed company protocols regarding customer interactions." The host raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying what we all saw in that video was company policy?" Victoria hesitated, her eyes darting to her legal counsel. "What I'm saying," she replied carefully, "is that Maison Devereaux has strict criteria regarding high-value items, and in real time, decisions have to be made to protect the luxury environment our clients expect." That single sentence was all it took to reignite the inferno. Twitter erupted. "So profiling is now called protecting the luxury environment," one tweet read, followed by thousands of retweets and a flood of mocking gifs. But the real blow came later that same afternoon when celebrity stylist Kendra Miles, whose client list included everyone from Grammy winners to royal family members, went live on Instagram. Her tone was calm but laced with fury. "Let me be crystal clear," she said, standing in front of a closet filled with runway exclusives. "Immani Carter is not only a longtime client of mine, she's been a patron of Maison Devereaux for over a decade. She owns not one, but 3 Cordelia bags, all purchased directly from their flagship. The only reason she wasn't recognized is because she doesn't post it. She doesn't flaunt. She just lives." The clip went viral in under an hour. Kendra continued, "That woman you humiliated? She's more respectful, more gracious, and more generous than half the people you roll out the red carpet for. And that's coming from someone who dresses red carpet guests." Screenshots of Immani's past purchases began to circulate, leaked quietly by allies within the brand. Receipts showed high-ticket orders under a different name, Carter & Company Holdings, revealing she had been shopping not just for herself, but for an entire executive network. News outlets jumped on the twist, updating their headlines. "Victoria claims policy. Turns out Immani was top-tier client all along." Memes exploded. One showed Victoria holding a strict policy manual while a fire-labeled receipts burned behind her. Another depicted Immani in a queen's robe, the caption reading, "Y'all tried to check the wrong woman." Internally, panic spread. Bellamont Luxe's board members began issuing private memos demanding a second, more substantial apology. Executives scrambled to analyze which influencers and ambassadors had already cut ties. The CFO warned that public perception was now directly impacting investor confidence, and legal was preparing for what looked more and more like an inevitable class action lawsuit. Meanwhile, Victoria, still insulated by her inner circle, doubled down in a second interview, this time with a Fashion Insider magazine. "The truth is, I was made a scapegoat," she insisted. "There's a culture at play here, one I didn't create but was told to uphold." The quote spread like wildfire, used as proof that she was more interested in deflecting than acknowledging. Critics dissected her every word, her tone, her use of passive language. "It's a kind of answer someone gives when they're sorry they got caught, not when they're actually sorry," one op-ed observed. Immani, still silent through all of this, had become a symbol without even trying. Her poise in the face of escalation, her lack of public rebuttal, her refusal to grandstand, all of it only amplified her power. Commentators began describing her as the quiet center of a cultural reckoning, and news panels debated how much of the industry's obsession with image was built on systemic exclusion. And still, Maison Devereaux offered no meaningful follow-up, no meeting request, no public acknowledgement of Immani's status as an actual loyal client. The deeper they ignored the facts, the louder the consequences became. Behind the scenes, legal departments fought to contain mounting PR damage, while executives scrambled to draft statements that might sound empathetic without exposing liability. But the real shock came not from words, but from exits. Big ones. One after another, major celebrity brand ambassadors began to cut ties with Maison Devereaux and its parent company. First came Zendaya, whose contract for a custom capsule line had been in development for 9 months. She posted a simple black and white message on her Instagram story. Allegiance means nothing without values. I stand with Immani. Attached to the message was a screenshot of her terminated agreement, dated and signed that morning. Hours later, Beyoncé's Parkwood management team released a statement confirming the dissolution of a multi-year partnership for exclusive tour wardrobe collaborations. The statement read, "Queen Bey stands for empowerment, not elitism. She supports brands that uplift, not gatekeep." It was signed off with a single phrase, "No check is worth compromising dignity." The industry reacted like glass shattering under pressure. Fashion news outlets ran breaking headlines. Devereaux deals collapse under backlash. $950 million in contracts vaporized overnight. And couture brand faces corporate extinction. The fallout was immediate and quantifiable. In less than 48 hours, Belle Lamont Luxe's stock dropped by 27%. Shareholders panicked. Analysts downgraded forecasts. Luxury investors pulled out with ruthless speed. Meanwhile, luxury resellers began rejecting Maison Devereaux items, citing ethical concerns and market devaluation. Even secondhand, the brand had become radioactive. Inside the Belle Lamont Luxe Manhattan headquarters, the mood transformed from edgy to apocalyptic. The CEO, Grant Halvorson, a man known for delivering investor calls with the confidence of a poker shark, summoned the board of directors for an emergency meeting. Held in a sterile conference room lined with framed photos of past fashion galas, the energy was cold, clipped, and desperate. "This is an exposure-level event," Halvorson said, pacing beside a screen projecting red lines plunging downward. "It's no longer about optics, it's asset survival." Executives nodded solemnly, their eyes locked on the real-time dashboard showing plummeting metrics. Lost partnerships, canceled shipments, terminated licenses. One VP interjected, "Do we have a read on how deep the celebrity fallout will go?" Another chimed in, "We've received inquiries from 3 more brand ambassadors requesting statements of dissociation." Halvorson rubbed his temple. "If we lose Pharrell and Kate, this entire quarter collapses." Someone offered we could float a compensation fund, make a donation, show accountability, but Halvorson cut him off. "We missed that window when we let the first apology go out without naming the damn woman." And then the line that sealed the tone of the room. "We're not dealing with a PR crisis. We're dealing with the price of arrogance." Outside the boardroom, employees buzzed with dread. Leaks became a torrent. A junior executive recorded part of the meeting and uploaded a subtitled clip online, where Halvorson's voice could be heard saying, "We let one store manager's ego cost us $1 billion image." The internet pounced. The quote was reposted alongside pictures of Victoria, side by side with falling stock graphs, and sarcastic captions like "When Karen cost the kingdom." Victoria, now fully isolated and unofficially suspended, found herself hounded by paparazzi outside her brownstone, where neighbors no longer smiled politely. Her phone rang constantly, not with apologies or support, but with interview requests and legal inquiries. Meanwhile, the fashion world turned its back. Industry events rescinded her invitations. A fashion committee revoked her regional director nomination. Even those who had once shared champagne with her in Paris now ghosted her emails. And yet, the brand's leadership had yet to issue a direct apology to Immani. That failure festered like rot beneath the glitz. Protesters remained outside Maison Devereaux storefronts, now joined by advocacy groups and nonprofit leaders. The world begged for her perspective, speculated endlessly about her silence, and in the absence of her words, elevated her to a symbol. But Immani hadn't disappeared. She was choosing her moment. And when it arrived, it was surgical. She accepted one interview, only one, and it wasn't with a gossip blogger or a fashion magazine. It was with the Morning Circuit, a national talk show known for its balanced tone and massive audience. On the day of her appearance, viewership spiked by 32%. She walked onto the stage in a simple navy blue sheath dress. No makeup team glam squad, no entourage, just Immani, composed, direct, radiant in the quiet way power is when it doesn't need to shout. The host, Michaela Reed, welcomed her warmly, but even Michaela seemed unsure how to approach the woman who had somehow become a cultural icon without ever saying a word. Immani, she began carefully, you've been at the center of a conversation that's shaken the fashion world. And yet, you've stayed remarkably silent. Why now? Immani smiled, not the polite kind, but one with weight behind it. Because timing matters, she said, her voice steady. I needed people to react not to me, but to the truth. Their truth. Because this wasn't about me, not really. It was about what's been allowed to pass as normal for far too long. The audience murmured in agreement, but it was Michaela's next question that detonated everything. Many are calling you a hero, but who is Immani Carter really? Immani looked straight into the camera. I'm a founder and managing partner of Immani Ventures, she said, her tone casual, but the silence that followed was anything but. We're a strategic capital firm with holdings across fashion, tech, and luxury retail. She paused just long enough for the weight to settle. And up until 3 days ago, we were one of the largest equity stakeholders in Bellamont Lux Group. Michaela blinked, clearly stunned. Wait, are you saying, yes, Immani continued. I own a significant share of the company that owns Maison Devereaux. The audience gasped. Social media imploded. Live streams froze. Tweets multiplied by the second. But Immani wasn't finished. In fact, she said, I was the lead negotiator on a global rebranding initiative involving several of the celebrity partnerships they just lost, including the Beyoncé tour collaboration. Michaela dropped her cue cards. The crowd erupted. Immani waited, letting the shock settle like snow over a burning field. I didn't walk into that store looking for confrontation, she said, once the noise quieted. I walked in because I was auditing the in-store experience. I do it often, anonymously, to see how our clients are treated without filters. She glanced toward the camera again, and I got my answer. The elegance of her reveal wasn't just in its timing, it was in its ruthlessness. Every corporation that had ignored her name, every executive who called her a narrative liability, every department that pretended she was just another customer, they were now exposed as having insulted, dismissed, and attempted to erase one of their own owners. More than that, they had embarrassed the very person who had structured the deals that made their most lucrative partnerships possible. Backstage, Immani's legal team finalized the documents she would later post online, official withdrawal from all Bellamont Lux equity. In tandem, she authorized the release of a press memo confirming the launch of her new venture, Empyrean Lux, a minority-owned, ethically sourced luxury house focused on redefining high fashion through accountability and representation. That memo hit the news cycle before the credits even rolled on the interview. Within minutes, celebrities who had canceled Maison Devereaux contracts began publicly aligning with Immani's new brand. Lena Vaughn posted a photo of her new Empyrean Lux handbag with the caption, "Not just fashion, justice stitched in every seam." DeMarcus Reed went live wearing a custom Empyrean blazer and said, "I only invest in brands that know what respect looks like." But while Bellamont executives scrambled to play catch-up, Immani was already 3 steps ahead. Before sunrise, her team distributed a statement to over 100 major publications, business wires, and media outlets. The headline was short, surgical, and absolute. Immani Carter withdraws all holdings from Bellamont Lux. Launches Empyrean Lux. Beneath the title, the statement outlined everything in chilling detail. Over the past 8 months, I have conducted a series of anonymous in-store evaluations to observe how luxury clients, especially those of color, are treated when no one suspects they carry power. My visit to Maison Devereaux was part of that audit. The result, unfortunately, confirmed a pattern I've seen replicated across too many retail institutions. Bias disguised as branding, gatekeeping dressed as exclusivity. I will no longer fund or associate with any entity that upholds discrimination as an aesthetic. Today, I'm reclaiming that narrative. The press release dropped like a bomb. Across newsrooms and social media platforms, the phrase "anonymous in-store evaluations" became a rallying cry. Articles titled, "She was testing them the whole time," and Immani Carter's masterclass in silent power dominated trending sections. Analysts now realized that the woman they once dismissed as a mistreated customer had, in fact, been gathering data, methodically, intentionally, with the precision of someone not just operating inside the system, but capable of rewriting it. And then came the real blow, Empyrean Luxe. The brand's launch announcement described it as a luxury house built on transparency, inclusion, and radical accountability. It promised sustainable sourcing, equitable leadership, and profit sharing with artisan communities. It declared its mission not only to redefine luxury, but to liberate it from its historical entanglements with exclusion. Within hours, the brand's pre-launch interest waitlist crashed the website. Investors who had once backed Maison Devereaux began calling Immani's new venture instead. 3 fashion conglomerates made unsolicited offers. She rejected them all. "Empyrean is not for sale," she tweeted later that afternoon. "It's for restoration." Meanwhile, Bellamont Luxe's board entered its most volatile period yet. The 27% stock drop turned into 38% after Immani's full withdrawal was confirmed. 4 key shareholders abandoned ship, citing breach of fiduciary ethics. The CFO resigned. The Global Partnerships division collapsed. In an emergency investor call, CEO Grant Halvorson's voice cracked as he tried to reassure what remained of their base. "We were exploring reconstruction options," he said, barely audible. "We did not anticipate this level of exposure." But the truth was clear. They hadn't just lost an investor. They had lost their foundation. And while the company flailed, Immani thrived. Publications from Forbes to Vanity Fair ran simultaneous features titled "The Woman Who Turned Exclusion into Empire." Late-night shows aired back-to-back clips comparing Victoria's smirk at the boutique to Immani's serene reveal on television. One viral mashup video featured a side-by-side montage labeled "The Fall of Arrogance, The Rise of Grace." In private circles, Immani's strategy was studied with the awe typically reserved for Wall Street tycoons and political tacticians. Corporate consultants began citing her as the architect of stealth equity disruption, the act of using silence, patience, and precise timing to unravel a brand's cultural stronghold from within. She had walked into a store to test a theory. She had walked out with a movement. But even amid the chaos she left behind, Immani never shifted the narrative back to vengeance. In every post, every interview, every public statement, she redirected the spotlight to purpose. "This was never about revenge," she told a journalist from The Atlantic. "It was about evolution, about building something better where those who look like me don't have to prove their worth to hold the door open." Devereaux, in a 1-paragraph email circulated to the press under the title "Internal Staff Realignment." But the wording couldn't mask the truth. She hadn't been let go to restructure. She had been ejected to stop the hemorrhage. Her exit, however, did nothing to stop the freefall of her reputation. Within 24 hours of her firing, Victoria's name trended globally under a new hashtag. #Karen of the Century. Satirical memes painted her as the face of elitist downfall, photoshopped onto historic paintings of fallen monarchs, overlaid with captions like "When gatekeeping goes wrong," and "From velvet ropes to unemployment lines." Late-night comedians roasted her nightly. Editorials in major outlets dissected her actions with forensic scrutiny, comparing her behavior to a long-standing pattern of exclusionary culture in luxury retail. Even her former allies within the industry publicly distanced themselves, offering vague statements about re-evaluating associations and aligning with inclusive values. But the damage to her personal brand ran deeper than public shaming. Recruiters blacklisted her quietly, not out of moral principle, but because no marketing team wanted to risk associating with the now infamous incident. One headhunter anonymously told The Cut she could be the best retail strategist in the country, and still, no one will touch her. Her name's poison. And that wasn't the worst of it. As the spotlight intensified on the culture she had embodied, a former Maison Devereaux staff member stepped forward anonymously to The Guardian. sharing her experience under Victoria's leadership. "We were trained to spot certain types of customers," the statement read, "but certain always meant black, brown, or anyone who didn't scream wealth through clothing. When we raised concerns, we were reminded that our job was to preserve the aesthetic." That single quote opened the floodgates. Dozens of ex-employees, many young, many people of color, came forward with eerily similar stories. They described weekly meetings where employees were coached to keep the environment pristine, which meant quietly shadowing shoppers who didn't fit the brand. One recounted being reprimanded for letting a black customer try on a limited edition jacket. Another detailed how their concerns about profiling were dismissed as overreactions to cultural differences. Internal HR logs leaked anonymously showed a pattern. Complaints filed, no investigations, and employee exits disguised as voluntary resignations. The findings were damning. Activist groups seized the moment. The Retail Justice Coalition filed a formal request to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for a full-scale investigation into Belle Lamont Luxe's hiring, retention, and anti-discrimination practices. At the same time, a prominent civil rights law firm began organizing a class action lawsuit, representing over 20 former employees who had allegedly been silenced or retaliated against for questioning discriminatory practices. "This isn't just a Victoria problem," one attorney declared during a live press conference. "This is a systemic rut that starts at the top and trickles into every dressing room, every fitting, every fake smile given to someone the system doesn't want to see succeed." Meanwhile, Victoria herself went underground. Paparazzi shots caught glimpses of her walking briskly out of a private town car, face obscured by oversized sunglasses, jaw tight. Rumors swirled of her trying to relocate to Europe, of rebranding herself as a luxury consultant, of seeking legal action for wrongful termination. But with every attempt to revive her image came another viral post, another leaked recording, another expose. One damning video clip, filmed months before the incident, resurfaced, showing her joking at a private event. "Sometimes I can just tell when someone's not first-class material." That moment sealed her fate. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. 6 months after her world imploded and her name became synonymous with privilege unchecked, Victoria Mason reemerged, not on a runway, not in a boutique, but in a modest community center on the south side of Chicago. Seated beneath fluorescent lights instead of chandeliers, surrounded not by stylists or executives, but by high school students and community leaders. Her hair, once perfectly styled and camera-ready, was tied back in a loose bun. Her eyes, no longer concealed by designer sunglasses, bore the weight of someone who had seen the full extent of her downfall and chosen to sit with it instead of run. The exclusive interview aired on a small but respected documentary series known for spotlighting stories of redemption, not scandal. And when the interviewer gently asked why she had agreed to speak now, Victoria exhaled slowly before answering with a voice that cracked on the second word. Because hiding didn't help. Because denying didn't change anything. Because if you're going to be hated, you should at least be hated for telling the truth. She paused, blinking back tears. And the truth is, I was wrong. About people. About power. About what makes someone valuable. The confession, raw and unscripted, shocked many. For the first time, Victoria publicly acknowledged the pain she had caused, not just to Immani Carter, but to the countless others she had diminished, dismissed, or disregarded in her pursuit of a pristine image. "I built my career on exclusion," she admitted. "I thought luxury meant protecting a certain look, a certain silence, a certain kind of comfort. I confused elitism with elegance. And I used that confusion to justify the way I treated people. That's something I have to carry now, something I will never forget." The interview cut to footage of Victoria volunteering twice a week at a local outreach center, tutoring young girls in entrepreneurship, many of whom were black and brown and came from neighborhoods that rarely saw investment, let alone mentorship from someone who once stood on magazine covers. She spoke not as a savior, not as someone seeking forgiveness, but as someone willing to serve quietly, without expectation. Over time, people began to notice the consistency in her actions. She wasn't seeking headlines. She declined TV offers, refused brand deals, and deleted all her social media. Her name slowly faded from the tabloids and began appearing, tentatively, in local press stories titled, "From Shame to Service," and "A Former Gatekeeper Gives Back." But it was her next move that stunned the world. In a formal press release delivered to major outlets, Victoria announced the launch of the Immani Fund, a scholarship initiative dedicated to supporting students of color pursuing careers in fashion, retail leadership, and business ethics. The fund pledged $10 million over the next decade, sourced entirely from Victoria's personal assets, severance packages, and the liquidation of her investment properties. In the statement, she wrote, "This is not charity. This is debt. And though no amount of money can undo the harm I caused, I hope this fund can remove at least one barrier for someone else to walk through a door that I once kept closed." Immani Carter responded not with a quote, not with criticism or applause, but with a single repost of the scholarship application link, captioned simply, "Let the next generation rise." It was the closest thing to closure the public had hoped for, and it landed not with controversy, but with quiet respect. Over time, the media's appetite shifted from scandal to solutions. Victoria's story was taught in university case studies, not as a hero's journey, but as a cautionary arc that bent toward growth. Her journey became a mirror for an industry forced to re-examine its own values, its own obsessions with image and control. Bellamont Luxe, though still operational, never regained its former luster. The company was restructured, sold off in pieces, and stripped of its most recognizable assets. Maison Devereaux, now under new ownership, reopened with a new name, a new mission, and a diversity council chaired by former employees once silenced under the old regime. And Empyrean Luxe? It became the standard. With Immani Carter at the helm, it reshaped the luxury space into something more than a status symbol. It became a sanctuary for talent, integrity, and future-facing beauty. Awards followed. Honors, profiles, global recognition. But Immani remained as she was in that first video, calm, self-assured, and grounded in something far deeper than vengeance. As the years passed, both women continued their work in parallel, one building anew, the other repairing what she had broken. And in their twin trajectories, the world found an ending not built on punishment, but on accountability. Not on erasure, but on evolution. Because, in the end, justice wasn't just served. It was transformed. The end. If you found this story powerful or thought-provoking, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in our storytelling series. What was the most surprising moment for you in this story? Was it Victoria's downfall or Immani's stunning reveal? Tell us in the comments, what part hit hardest? And where in the world are you watching from? We'd love to hear your thoughts.